Hey everybody, and welcome to Doge's Emporium of D&D Cringe. In today's episode of D&D Horror Stories, we have a tale about a DM letting the power go way to his head. A story about a player that doesn't like jokes, and much more. But first, cats. That was Cats, so subscribe today. Anyway, let's get into the stories. DM calls themselves God, by Reddit user TheKingmaker76. This happened about 4 years ago. I was a regular and fairly popular at my local game store, where I played a lot of Magic for a few years at this time. I also collected 5 ebooks and was really looking to join a campaign. One of the store employees at the time came to me and asked me if I'd like to join the store one he was going to start. He had just bought Dungeon of the Mad Mage and was super excited to run it. He was about middle-aged and a bit rough around the edges, mainly that he thought super highly of himself. We will call him M. At the time, I overlooked how badly a DM with a massive ego can ruin a campaign. I just thought perfect, and made a human life cleric and took the observant feat to up my passive perception. My first hint that things were not right is when I met with him to roll stats. I rolled pretty average, and as I'm filling them in, he starts telling me that this can be an 18 when I rolled a 12, and that this can be a 14 when I rolled an 8, and so on. In response, I asked him if this was going to be a high-powered game, which I had no problem with, but he said no. He was just giving me better stats because he liked me. I'm a male and straight, but so is he. I asked him if everyone else got to do that, and he said no. Being uncomfortable with potential favoritism, I just told him that I was going to use what I rolled. We had to meet later that week to discuss my character, as I had been building characters just for fun at that point. I had no problem with my sheet, and so we mainly talked about motivation, and I asked him about my character's god. The following exchange took place.
Oh, that's me.
No, I get as the DM you're acting as the god and stuff, but what is the god's name?
It's me.
Oh, so like a single deity game? To keep things a bit simple?
No, it's me. I am literally the god of everything, and you pray to me. And I control everything. And I'm a pretty vengeful god too. Ha 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 ha.
Alright, I guess. Despite my better judgment, and perhaps because it was my first time actually playing, I ended up going to the session 1. It was just fine at first. He started us immediately in the yawning portal, and we started role-playing, when he stops to describe a character sitting off in the shadows that is huge and well-built. My character goes up to the guy in the shadows, and politely tries to buy him a drink and get a conversation going. M then describes how the character in the shadows just starts attacking me. My character then casts command on the shadow character and points at a well with the command, jump. He doesn't even roll and just says that it fails. So we play on, and this shadow character completely floors us. We are all knocked unconscious, and the session was over after he revived all of us, and he says,
Yeah, that guy was a level 20 fighter. You all actually did well there.
I asked, oh, then was he an elf or something to resist my command so easy?
No.
Did he have a magical item then?
No, just some enchanted brass knuckles. I actually created the character all myself. Pretty cool, huh?
I mean, yeah, he really kicked our level 4 asses.
I named him after me too. I rarely get to play a level 20 character, so that was a treat.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely didn't think it was cool.
Oh, by the way, you didn't pray to me, so next session you can't cast spells.
What?
I told you I was a vengeful god, dude.
I get wanting a plot element to happen, but at least fake the role, especially when it's a self-insert in a story. Luckily, I had a work thing come up and wasn't able to attend another session, but I still wouldn't have if I was able to. Pretty minor compared to some stories on here, but I think about how that experience could have turned me off of the hobby permanently. Yeah, that DM was definitely having a power trip. I get joking about how the DM is essentially a god, but this dude took it to a whole new level. Then there was the self-insert level 20 character that he basically goaded the players into fighting while at level 4, and making him resistant to OP's command spell. And to top it all off, telling OP that he couldn't cast spells the next game because he didn't pray to the DM. Did he really expect a player to come back to a game after doing something like that? Perhaps he took offense to OP not going with the upping of his stats, and this was just his version of getting revenge on OP for not accepting his gift of being overpowered. Thankfully, this didn't ruin D&D for OP in the long run. Let's move on. Player doesn't understand concept of humor game by Reddit user Prismatic Leviathan. Now, I'm normally a DM, but recently I got to play in a game. Unfortunately, it ran into some problems. A friend decided to run a humor-heavy game in his very not serious world. The lineup included me playing a super edgelord betrayal paladin by the name of Geralt Kilgrave, Timmy Turnips, a teenage halfling farmer assassin rogue who accidentally slaughters people with farming implements, Iron Tiger, an Amazonian luchador barbarian who fights with an enchanted folding chair, Bellspring, a depressed alcoholic fairy cleric, and who we'll call Steve, playing a dragonborn Echo Knight fighter obsessed with swords. Now, Steve had played with us a bit before and had a number of red flags, but nothing truly malicious. He had to be the center of attention, complained when other people talked too long, despite normally taking the most time out of the group, and always undercut me as the DM when trying to set a scene or have a serious moment. Nothing so bad that it made me want to kick him, but definitely contributed to the DM fatigue. Part of Steve's problem is that he always had to turn everything into a joke, so I thought this game was perfect for him. He could joke around, get some out of the system, and hopefully be a better player by the end of it. Naturally, he immediately complained about us
Doing stupid stuff.
and ruining the game. Steve targeted me in particular, as he thought Garrett was making fun of his character by having to have the more tragic backstory. To be fair, I would literally just add stuff on the spot, and by the end of it, Garrett was the son of an Aesir king and succubus, who raised him from birth in the abyss to fight, only to be betrayed and left for dead by his teenage girlfriend, which gave him the rage he needed to fight his way out of hell and take revenge on the Holy Kingdom that sent him there in the first place. When me and several others tried to explain to him that Garrett was very obviously lying about all of it, Steve was still upset and complained about me trying to one-up him. Despite everyone else having a blast, Steve just got more and more upset. It all came to a head when Garrett tried to intimidate a full-on red dragon, which is not a skill he was even proficient in. Of course, I rolled a natural 20, and against all conceivable odds, the dragon actually believed Kilgrave. The entire table erupts into laughter, but Steve was having none of it. He yells, "This is fucking R-worded," throws his dice, and stomps upstairs. But the best part? He gets a month ban from the store since the owner heard what he said. So, let me get this straight. Steve would have been the one to make jokes during a more serious campaign, which normally is fine, but it sounds like he took it to annoying levels. But when someone is actually playing a joke campaign, he gets upset about it being absurd and takes everything too seriously? Jesus Christ, where does he live? Opposite planet? It sounds like Steve is just one of those people that is only happy when others aren't, and people having fun bothers him for some reason. Screw this guy. Ban him from your games, I say.
Banish him!
Where'd that come from? Anyway, let's move on. The campaign's going great, except by Reddit user Yuri Space Pirate. Every single time anyone casts Speak with Animals or Speak with Plants, we get the hilarious DM goof that the target has an existential freakout at having just been granted sentience, refusing to answer any questions or listen to any requests to calm down. Instead, they just scream. we have to divert all of our roleplay for a good 15 minutes, grinding the session's momentum to a screeching halt every single time. Multiple players have expressed that the joke has really diminishing returns, and at this point, it's just getting grating, as well as making any good aligned characters feel like an asshole whenever they cast this seemingly innocuous spell. I, as a ranger, am getting the worst of it, since both Speak with Animals and Speak with Plants are permanently on my spell list, and I'm supposed to be able to cast them for free once a day. First, we just half joked about how the bit was getting predictable. Now we're just outright saying that it's not entertaining anymore, it's just tedious. But despite our objections, the DM still thinks that it's the funniest thing in the world to keep on doing. Is anyone else a victim of a reoccurring gotcha that only the DM thinks is funny?
Yeah, that sounds like that could be tiresome. Don't get me wrong, running jokes in a campaign can be a blast. For example, in my old Wednesday night campaign, may it rest in peace, I played a bard that had a habit of giving out fake names, but it would be a different name each time, and I was actually keeping a list of them in my notes. And the joke of it would be that all the names would be of the most mundane nature, with a food-themed surname, like Gary Pumpernickel or Jeremy Porterhouse. This type of thing can work if it's not done every time, because the players would always be wondering what sort of stupid name would be next. But this thing with Speak with Animals just sounds like it got old real fast. Not only that, I could see that preventing the use of the spell in the future, just for the fact that the player wouldn't want to witness a 15-minute tangent on how a blade of grass has an existential crisis for the 10th time. But before we move on, more cats. That was more cats, so be sure to like the video today. Now, let's get into the final story. And before we get into the next story, I need to give a content warning. It contains themes of in-character sexual abuse, so if you would like to skip this one, I'll see you again in the next video. Otherwise, let's hop in.
DM makes my character into a sexual abuser without my input. By Reddit user, Talia Talltale. I want to point out that the DM in question is a massive in-real-life friend of mine who's a good person, but sometimes when it comes to D&D, they get dicey. Okay, so this happened a few months ago at this point, but it's still really not sitting well with me, and I feel like sharing it. The only two characters of note are my character, Yinny, and Alan Rogue, who was in the process of becoming a vampire, relevant for later, and the DM. This took place after a job in the campaign, where the party ended up undoing a cult by revealing their shadow demon god as just a 20-something-year-old tiefling using mostly illusion magic. We decided to spare the tiefling, who was named Keith, on the spot by the DM, and we kinda did the whole thing of adopting him into the party. My character claimed them as her own, since they were about the same age, and I tried to work it out as this cute little thing the character could have, and the DM went along with it too. I even had her use most of the money she earned from the job on a ring that would keep him safely near her in the event of an emergency, which I tried to make as another sweet little thing to play into. This is also relevant for later. The DM went along with all of this and seemed to like it as well. So this is when things start getting bad, and also when the sexual violence stuff starts to come in, so consider this a second warning to be safe. Well, come the next session, and the party is about to head off to do another job, and that's when the DM drops this lovely little description of Keith as everyone is gearing up, paraphrasing of course. So, Keith takes off his shirt to put on another one, and his torso is fucked up. There's tons of scars from scratches, bites, cuts, etc. He also seems to visibly wince away from Yinny. The description kinda caught everyone off guard, including me. Especially me. Now, I had earlier made a lighthearted joke about a little bit of biting, because, well, vampire. But nothing to this degree. I literally never implied Yinny even did anything along the lines of getting rough, other than the small biting joke. This was just something that they just said happened, without even asking me a single thing first, just whipped it out of nowhere. The party kinda stared at me, mostly in character, so I couldn't blame them, and told my character off, which I just went with because I was too nervous to speak up and didn't know the effects this would have across the rest of the campaign. Well, fast forward to when the party has not only done the job, but is finished with it. Keith was set off to stay with some civilians for safekeeping and was out of sight. Some context for what's next. I had made an, admittedly bad in retrospect, comparison to the Castlevania anime. Small spoiler on the next sentence or two for those that care. And the ring that Hector has put on him by Lenore, for those that are familiar with it. It was the only thing I could think up on the spot when I first described what she wanted the ring to be like, because I had watched the show and had it on my mind. I did try to mention that it wasn't meant to be as rapey as it was in the show. Warning, this is where the self-mutilation part comes in. So, when the party goes back to inform the civilians everything was alright and pick Keith back up, he had grabbed a knife and cut off his own finger with the ring on it when we returned. Again, taking a note from the anime and twisting the ring to be much more creepy and controlling than I ever wanted it to. The DM also added the nice detail that it apparently suppressed his magic completely, a detail I never even mentioned. Keith still stayed with the party after this, but always hung around the other party members, and was genuinely traumatized by my character, backing away whenever she so much as walked near him. The party also kinda became more hostile to Yinny overall after this, which, being fair, I don't judge them for at all, since, in character, as far as they knew, Yinny straight up was assaulting this NPC and raping him, since the implications the DM gave with the ring was that that shit wasn't consensual. Hell, I'm impressed that's all the party did. Oh yeah, Keith being traumatized by Yinny lasted the entire several-month-long campaign, and this happened in the third or so session. This came up in a conversation at the table recently after a game. They were joking about the event a bit, and DM said something along the lines of,
"Yeah, he kinda enjoyed it at first. Then the biting and scratching started."
And I tried to go along with it, awkwardly laughing and trying to salvage this character a little by making a nervous joke about their safe word being Worcestershire, because, haha, funny word is hard to say, and that shit. Because then, it at least implies that they had one. Even after a few months off, this still leaves a bad taste in my mouth in regards to Yinny. Whenever I consider playing as her again, this event sticks out in my mind a ton and makes me feel genuinely really uncomfortable with her. TLDR, DM turns what I tried to make a cute relationship with an NPC into one where my character was a sexual abuser without my input. Well, from what I can gather from this story, I think that this wasn't the case of the DM being malicious or anything, but just a case of poor communication. When OP had described the ring being like the one from the Castlevania anime, which, side note, if you haven't seen yet, do yourself a favor and watch it. Perhaps when OP said that she didn't want it to be as dark, the DM didn't hear it, or it wasn't properly construed. Though it was kinda messed up for DM to say that all the scratching and biting stuff took place without OP's input. The moment that the DM started describing Keith as having scratch and bites all over his back, OP should have spoke up about how that wasn't what she intended the relationship or the ring to be. I'm sure if she did, then the DM would have rewound a bit and described the scene differently. And the ongoing theme that OP didn't like would have never taken place. Remember, communication is super important in D&D, especially when it comes to more adult-themed stuff. Never be hesitant to speak up when you feel that you should. My advice to OP, if the campaign continues, would be to talk to her DM and try to come up with a way to course-correct the way OP's character is. Perhaps say that those characters were into heavy roleplay or something, or just retcon all the beats entirely. I mean, it's D&D. Imagination's the limit. Though, that's just my thinking. What do you guys think on this one? And if you have a story that you would like to be read on the channel, be sure to post it in the d&Ddoge subreddit, or even feel free to contact me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may all of your rolls be natural 20. Until next time.